This video covers the different filings that public companies make with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And the reason this video is going to be useful is to just show you the range of information you can find about a public company by using its required disclosures on the Securities Exchange Commission website. So let me share my screen, this one. And let me just go through, this is just a slide on the public company filing requirements. And this is just a sample of some of the required forms that companies are required to file in certain circumstances. So the first category here is registration statements. And these forms will have a name to them. They're either called S1 if it's a first registration statement, or an S1A if it's an amendment to that registration statement. So if they had to change it a little bit, they'll have a /A next to it. And this is an initial registration statement. It's required if the company is planning to sell securities to a large number of unaccredited investors. So if they're going to make this, if they're going to raise capital from unsophisticated investors, they need to file this Form S1 to give those investors structured information about what they're getting themselves into. That's what the S1 is for. There's also a 10Q. So after the company is public and they're operating and a quarter goes by, they'll file a 10Q. And the 10Q is financial statements and footnotes for 1 quarter's worth of information. So they'll give you income statement for the quarter, balance sheet for the end of the quarter, cash flow statement for the quarter, statement of stockholders' equity for the quarter. So it's just a quarterly financial statements. Companies file these for Q1, Q2, and Q3. Then in Q4, which is the 4th quarter of the year, companies need to file annual financial statements. So that is where you get the 10K. For a US company, will file a 10K. And that's a more detailed version of a 10Q. So it's got financial statements and footnotes on it, but the footnotes and financial statements are more detailed. They're also audited by a independent third-party auditor. And the auditor is there to make sure that the information in that 10K can be relied upon by investors and other users of the financial statements. So the 10K is for US companies. A 20F is for foreign companies that are listed on a US exchange. They'll file a 20F, which is a foreign company annual report on the SEC's website. And then for Canadian companies, they file Form 40F on the SEC's website. So those are the different form names. Next, companies are, operating in the world and stuff happens at unscheduled times. So if a material meaning important, unscheduled event occurs that investors need to know about, companies will file what's called a Form 8K. And that will cue the investor that something material just happened and I should read this 8K to figure out what happened and what implications that has for my investment. So that's a Form 8K. And for foreign filers, foreign companies will file a 6K. It's just a different form name, but it's the same idea. Next, public companies are required to have annual shareholder meetings where the shareholders can vote on things like, is the CEO's compensation fair? Should we do this merger? And other major corporate activities. Who should be on the board of directors? So those items that the shareholders, if you own a share of stock, you get to vote on those items. And shareholder meeting materials, which is information about what the meeting is going to be about and what's going to be put up as something to vote on, that has to be filed with the SEC. And that's Form Def 14A. There's also Pre-14E, Def M14A. So these are different types of proxy materials. For example, a Def M14A is for if a merger is being contemplated, they'll need to hold a shareholder meeting and they'll file a Def M14A. So these are just some of the form names that you'll find on the SEC's website to call your attention to this type of material being filed. Finally, insider trades. So CEOs and CFOs and major executives and major shareholders in a company are required to disclose to the rest of us investors if they trade stock. So you'll probably be interested, right? If the CEO is selling his or her shares, you'll be interested to know that and try to think of, well, why would they be selling those shares? Same for buying. If CEO makes a huge purchase of those shares, well, do they know something I don't know? So investors want to be made aware of those trades, and they are made aware of those trades through Form 4. So you'll see a Form 4 filed for a company. And now I'll just show you what these forms look like on the SEC's website. So let's go to the SEC's website. And here it is. So what I've searched here is the SEC's website for Uber. So Uber's corporate name is Uber Technologies Incorporated. And when you search for them on the SEC's website, it'll pull up a list of all the filings that they've made in chronological order, reverse chronological order. So the top line is the most recent filing that they made. And on August 7th, 2020, they filed a 10Q. So they filed a 10Q, which is the quarterly financial information to update investors for how did the quarter go. So investors are made aware of that. Next down is an S4. So it's kind of similar to an S1, but they've already filed an S1. S1 is when you initially register your shares. S4 is maybe a subsequent issuance of shares, but same concept. So there's an S4. Here's an 8K, a material unscheduled event occurred. And here's a bunch of Form 4s here. So there's a bunch of insiders that were either buying or selling Uber stock, and so they're disclosing that in these forms. More 8Ks. Here's a prospectus. We haven't learned about that one, but you can Google these form names and just figure out what they are. Let's see if there's any others to point out. Here's a Def A 14A. So this is a element of a proxy statement. So this is information about a shareholder meeting. And actually more information is probably in this Def 14A, definitive proxy statements. And that'll give you all the information you need to know about the shareholder meeting. And that's usually filed after a 10K. And so here's a 10K that Uber filed. And that was filed March 2nd, 2020. So it probably covers the 2019 fiscal year. And if you want to see their 10K, you just click on this documents link. So that's many of the, let's see if we can find, actually last, let's see if we can find Uber's S1, because they went public recently. They went public in the most recent couple years. So actually what I'll do is I'm going to exclude, and I would suggest this, I would exclude these ownership filings, which is the Form 4s, because there's just like a ton of them. So let's show all, excluding the Form 4s. And that way we'll be able to get through this information quicker. So let's go all the way down. Oh, we've gone too far. And here we are. Okay, so on April 11th, 2019, here they filed an S1, which was their registration statement for going public, for doing their IPO. And they were required to file this registration statement to inform investors about what they're getting themselves into if they buy a share of Uber stock on the public market. So that's what that S1 was for. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video where we just go through the different forms that public companies file on the SEC's website to find the range of information you can find on a company that's public. So the caveat is you'll only be able to find this information for a public company. Private companies get to keep all of their information private. That's why they call it private. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and that's it. Bye-bye.